morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another fine Wednesday morning. It's a little gray here in the city of Philadelphia, but we have a good show for you. Welcome to another coffee break chat. Um, I saw that the camera could be a weapon. I saw that the camera could be a weapon. Uh, uh, what's the rest of this quote? Sorry. Against poverty, against racism, against all sorts of social wrongs. I knew at that point I had to have a camera. Gordon Parks, ladies and gentlemen. Gordon Parks, a famous and successful black photographer, um, uh, born in 1912, died in 2006. Um, Amazing work throughout his career, and I highly recommend you go check it out. Um, yeah, we have a good show for you today. Sorry, I'm just checking a few things, making sure things are working. Um, Looks like we're having no difficulties, just making sure that everything's working. Still trying to get things kind of back in shape. We had this one sort of method of getting things out to everyone, which was called Mob Crush. And without warning, Mob Crush was purchased and deleted pretty much within a week of its the transaction where it was turned over. So we no longer have Mob Crush, but we've got other things. We've got now an app called Live Push, which allows us to do pretty much the same thing, and it has a better input for the folks' comments. If you want to comment on any of our live chats, we will see it, and it has the ability to be shown on our live stream. At any rate, the show that we have for you today, red lines, red states, seeing red, red lights, and hopefully soon we'll have our special guest Lynette Bond with Heart Ripped Out Twice, and So Can You, and Connie Drummond with Brown Skin Girl. Both shows are coming up. They are Heart Ripped Out Twice and So Can You is a fringe show. Um, and the Fringe is coming up in a little over 2 weeks. And then Brown Skin Girl is a new show being put up in Delaware. So we'll hopefully have the opportunity to chat about that with those folks. Let's see what else we have for you this morning. Excuse me. Um, Little out of sorts. Just having a cold. Having a kid sometimes means having a cold. I don't know if that's true for everybody, but it at least seems to be true for me. My wife doesn't seem to be quite as susceptible to them, but I catch colds from our kiddo all the time. Um, it's really unfortunate, but anyway. I guess that's what happens when you have, uh, a child who goes to daycare and is exposed to all kinds of things. Is good for them, um, uh, but not necessarily good for your the parents. Um, September is National Save Your Photos Month, which is why we have the photo quote this morning. Um, National Save Your Photos Month would like to remind you when natural disasters, digital malfunctions, or human error occurs, treasured memories are lost forever. Save Your Photos Month reminds us to back up our digital pictures and scan and save the vintage ones. I mean, you know, I, I've there's always been these options, and they're becoming more and more popular, for folks to make sure that they have their digital imagery backed up automatically. And I think it is a really good reminder. If you have an Android or iPhone, um, any modern digital phone, and you take pictures on it, um, phones get lost and damaged all the time. Rather than losing those photos, why don't you set up an automatic backup? It's relatively easy to do. You can do it with your contacts too. I think one of the phrases that we use will soon become obsolete, which is "new phone, who dis." I don't think it's going to be remain a valid phrase forever, just because people are going to be able to always have their contacts with them. I've had always had my contacts with me since about the late '90s, just because that's how I do things. Um, mm. uh, Today's coffee, but a cup brought to you by the Sherman House Museum, Lancaster, Ohio. Um, yeah, I like my coffee like I like Atlanta hot. Um, mm. At least I find it funny. Anyway. All right, so let's get into some of the topics for the day. First up, we've got red lines. On Twitter, Jojo from Jersey tweeted, "This has to be a red line. If this isn't a red line, what isn't?" Jojo from Jersey was referencing the revelation that Trump included in the documents that he stored at Mar-a-Lago, kind of haphazardly. Uh, they He had in there an entire dossier on a foreign government and their nuclear capabilities. Um, the folks that have been getting these insights, of course, are not revealing exactly which foreign government it is, um, and what nuclear capabilities that were confirmed. I have my pet theories. You can check out our Twitter account, Light Thief Prod on Twitter, um, for those pet theories. There's lots of things that it could be. I think that it becomes rather obvious when you just think about it for a few minutes that um, nuclear capabilities are um, probably well known within the intelligence community. Internationally, nuclear capabilities of any country, but this could be a case of us having a close ally, and therefore having more verifiable information on their nuclear capabilities, um, than an enemy of that close ally, and somebody that Mr. Trump might like to work with. Um, one person asked on Twitter, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year old, and I was like, well, you see, when certain men love money very, very much, and then they spend more than they ever make, they get a set of special friends. And those special friends sometimes ask for special favors. And those special favors may seem scary, but those special friends don't care. Um, and I think that's what's going on here. I could be wrong, but some of Trump's documents are so classified that even all the members of his cabinet, that's the group of people that advise the president, um, are not allowed to see them. That they have to be read in on them. And so what does this mean for the Trump case? What does this mean for what's going on? Well, in case you're not up and up on Trump news, uh, Mr. Trump decided to ask for what's called a special master. A special master in a court case is a neutral-ish third party assigned by the court to review documents that the government has taken as evidence to make sure that they are legitimate evidence, that they're not something that could be um, overruled in court. So something that, uh, for wild example, is subject to attorney-client privilege. So say amongst these documents that were seized at Mar-a-Lago, there was a medical record of Mr. Trump that had never been published. That document would be protected by many laws, but also wouldn't be admissible in court. So the special master would then order that that record be returned to Mar-a-Lago or the office of Mr. Trump, and so that's where we are. We're at a point where folks are asking for that kind of leeway, that kind of help, and on the face of it, it doesn't seem like it would be a big deal. But it is, because the nature of the documents, as revealed, um, means that only certain people can review them. These are documents that are so classified that some people literally cannot have access to them. They would cause folks to possibly be killed in foreign actions. They would reveal the nature of um, some of our clandestine operations. Not that, necessarily that's a bad thing for folks that are, of an anarchist or um, freedom of information bent. But at the same time, I don't want to see people die just because somebody thought that that was a good idea for Mr. Trump to have those documents. At any rate, um, so in order to get that order, that special master, Donald Trump has managed to get his case in front of a judge he himself appointed, Judge Cannon. And the judge who he managed to get his case in front of is actually was declared not qualified by the American Bar Association before she was appointed. And there's questions as to whether or not she's actually working with the defense, Trump's lawyers, etc., and the Federalist Society in this case. So these will all be interesting things that get teased out by the DOJ. And I think that most likely, what we're seeing is several overlapping long games. The folks at the DOJ aren't dumb, and they don't really want to see. They're not Trump sycophants. They're not people who want to see this case go nowhere. They're probably just trying to give the former administration far enough, basically enough leeway to hang themselves, as they say. Give them enough rope, so to speak. Um, at any rate, let's go to one of our special guests. We have with us, and I'm going to bring you on screen, Hold on one second. There you are. We have with us Linnea. Linnea, please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Hi, yeah, my name is Lynette Bond. I use all pronouns, and I do a lot of things. I create uh, new works, theater. I act in traditional plays, and I also work on climate issues with Physicians for Social Responsibility Pennsylvania, and then a few other organizations, Earthquaker Action Team. So I work on right now, I'm working on issues of gas in Philadelphia and also the Vanguard SOS campaign, trying to push Vanguard to take more responsibility for climate change.
Awesome.
And I also teach acting. So
Great. You have a fringe show coming up, Heart Ripped Out Twice, and So Can You.
that's right.
Where's that going to be?
That's going to be at the Moss Building, which is on 5th between Master and Thompson. So it's in the Fishtown area.
All right. Yeah, I love the Moss Building. It's one of the coolest buildings to come out of the like kind of industrial to artist pipeline.
Yeah,
they've got one of the largest solar panel installations, one of the first solar panel installations on their roof. They're
I did not know that.
yeah, they have a one of the first green roofs in the Fishtown area, and it was really it's from a while ago, so I don't know how well it's holding up. But the whole roof is solar panel covered. I got to tour that back in the day. Um, I used to have a studio up in Port Richmond, and I always it was in a 5-story building, and I always looked out over like the Fishtown area and thought, man, so much flat space that's not covered by anything. Why isn't it all solar panels? And the Moss Building actually has them.
A great question.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about Heart Ripped Out Twice.
So the show came out of an impulse to write about a couple of different things. In August of 2020, I found out that I had a tumor on my brainstem. My symptoms were that I had a little bit of difficulty swallowing and my tongue goes to the side. So pretty wacky symptoms. And I asked my dad, who is a physician, should I be concerned about this? And he looked concerned for maybe the first time in his life and was like, yeah, go see a doctor. So I found out that I had one behind my brainstem. And then I found out later on, some months later, that I had one behind my heart as well. So, and then they attempted open back surgery. That didn't work. They did open chest surgery. They took it out. I had an infection. I was rehospitalized. And then I was on a PICC line for a long time, which is where they have a catheter into your heart and you shoot up antibiotics 3 times a day. And then they finally did radiation on my brainstem. And then after all that ended, my boyfriend and I, my partner, we broke up. And that was, so it was sort of the sensation of having all of this physical pain and then all of this emotional pain and how they feel the same. So that we have this phrase in English, getting your heart ripped out, and as a person who's had my heart ripped out, that's actually accurate. And I thought that was a story worth telling because it's such a ubiquitous human experience to lose love, and then this other experience is so rare. But ultimately, I think all of my work asks about apocalypse, about personal apocalypse or societal apocalypse. So I can't really write about this thing that happened to me without writing about it in the context of the place we're in with our climate crisis and the intensity of this moment. So the show is actually a saleswoman for existence. You are a nebulous ether. You're in the nebulous ether. You're a floating memoryless energy. And I'm trying to sell you on existing. But unfortunately, it keeps slipping into all of these realities of life. So sort of got to make the choice at the end, you can come out or not.
Awesome. Sorry, I'm just checking on something here on this end.
No worries.
We appear to have had a hiccup with um, our Twitter feed. At any rate.
Well, I had a hiccup this morning, which I apologize for. It's been, as I've been directing and acting, I wrote it, I've designed everything. I wear 7 costumes in the show. I haven't even counted the number of props I have that I've built. So, and plus I'm marketing it and producing it. So it's been a very chaotic few months with the crescendo of the chaos coming till today. And there's a couple things that I actually have to still do today. So, you know, like I had my my tech in the space yesterday and realized, oh, I assumed this one thing, and it's actually, now I need to build something to take care of that problem. So, you know, I'm right there with the tech issues because I am all over the place.
It's amazing how much technology has advanced even in the last year or so, and we're all
overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean we're all dealing with like brand new things, and it's just wild. I see what's going on. Okay, I'll fix that at a later date. So apparently our Twitter feed isn't going to work today, but that's okay. We have all the others. And I will fix the Twitter feed at another time. Probably end up turning off Twitch and going to Twitter instead. At any rate, sorry about that. Yeah, this show sounds quite interesting. It sounds very exciting. Just to jump on something that you mentioned earlier, and something that's going around in the news right at the moment. You mentioned that you're a climate activist. And you are, I presume, a resident of Philadelphia, since you're doing something for Philadelphia Fringe. What have you seen, heard, thought about the project in South Philadelphia at the park there?
At the park. I'm involved in so many issues, and I'm like, you're gonna have to update me.
Sorry. So FDR Park, if you don't know, the meadows at FDR Park is a large area. Some of the FDR Park meadows used to be a golf course on the western side of FDR Park. There's previously was a golf course. It is no longer a golf course, but the meadows is what it became, and there's starting to be some interesting pushback to folks who want to preserve the meadows, and I'm interested in what other people think. So the pushback that I've seen this morning is that people are saying that there's starting meadows, to be some, what has recently happened is that the project has started to get its initial green light. It started to go through its initial phases. The construction company that's responsible for some of it recently began their work, and they did a massive clearing of basically 10 times the size of Clark Park. So 10 an area, they did a tree felling and straight up clearing of an area the size of 10 Clark Parks. And so
we're not talking about Overbrook, we're talking about FDR?
Yes.
Because I'm familiar with the Overbrook
clearing.
clearing.
No, this is a new one. The Overbrook clearing is another golf course. that I still haven't seen the final budget that got approved, but I'm not sure, and I'm not sure if they got the $3 million that they asked for, but they were asking the city for $3 million to do the Overbrook Park golf course revitalization. Um, and that was part of the budget hearings. I haven't kept up with the group that is fighting that, but um, I find that fascinating that we're willing to give $3 million kind of sight unseen to golf course. We have to fight for, you know, like an extra 1.5 million for the arts in Philadelphia every year. Um, Sorry. So long term fight. And feel free to interrupt me if I'm saying anything that sounds dumb, or you agree with, or you want to say anything at all. It's fine. Um, but yeah, so that's an interesting one to me. But yeah, so this is FDR Park. FDR Park, for those that don't know, hosts the Southeast Asian Market every weekend. It has a large lake, man-made lake in the middle of it, and the area that is the golf course and meadows used to be before it was a golf course used to be a river and a catchment, kind of a swampy catchment for overflow from the Schuylkill. The Schuylkill River, it's actually the all of FDR Park is kind of on a floodplain of the Schuylkill River. If you review like a big picture map, you can see how, you know, rivers kind of do this sort of thing, and over the decades, they kind of change course usually, but man controlled rivers and rivers in cities tend to keep their same shape until something drastic happens like a flood. And FDR Park is very clearly in a floodplain of the Schuylkill River. And so it was filled in um, along the time that the initial fill-ins for um, the airport and the Navy Yard were done to try and make that area more usable. In the, I believe it's the 1930s, the golf course was built along the existing river kind of valley that leads down to what is now the meadows of FDR Park. Um, a lot of people have been surveyed, and there's been a bit of community engagement, but this park is under the auspices of the Parks and Rec Department of the City of Philadelphia, and the they recently created a master plan, quote unquote master plan, for the revitalization of FDR Park, which does include some nice things, some nice new buildings, repavement program for the one road that goes through FDR Park. But initially, as part of our bid to host the FIFA championships, we proposed to FIFA that we would create multiple soccer fields with large audience seating so that they could have practice fields, and that they would become part of, you know, the urban landscape later after they were no longer used for FIFA. People have kind of questioned that. You know, what FIFA does have a reputation, as does the Olympics Committee, of creating these facilities at the expense of the cities that they come into, and then the facilities just go out of use because there's not as much demand for soccer fields when FIFA isn't in town. So, what are we going to do with 10 soccer fields? And so there's this interesting kind of back and forth pushback in social media, um, where people are saying things like, "Oh, we're not thinking." Until recently, most of the push has been, this is ridiculous. It seems like this is just a program to commercialize FDR Park, privatize it, and make it revenue neutral or make it earn money, because that is a stated goal of Parks and Rec. Um, and there's been a pushback just recently, just starting this week, really, against the people who are decrying the destruction of all of this, you know, timber and woodland area, saying that we're not thinking of the communities that will use the space after, after it's been redone.
Yeah. I think something important to add is also that it's very clear that Philadelphia, as well as the world, needs to preserve its green space. I mean, I can't necessarily, I could, from a, I don't, yeah, I'm not sure that like building a soccer field, it's going to get the use that after FIFA. But what's certain is that Philadelphia lacks green space, and that it every time we cut down trees, we're working against our own air quality. We're working against our the greenhouse gas problems that we have, that the cooling and carbon uptake, which is what's causing global warming, is our increasing carbon footprint. So yeah, I guess for that perspective, certainly, I question. I always question cutting down trees. Always, I will always question cutting down trees because we are in a deficit, you know.
We are in
And
a deficit of trees.
yeah, so yeah, I yeah.
Yeah, it's a fascinating back and forth argument to me. I think it's one of the rare times when there might actually be a two sides to the story. Like where people on either side of it have a point. At the same time, the contractors who are doing this new construction have already violated their contract in that. The city had asked them to preserve old growth trees, and they just clear cut everything that in the area that they were told to work in. Um, so
I'm so tired of hearing that. Are you tired? I'm so tired of
yeah,
hearing that. Yeah.
yeah, it's like what I to be more specific, I'm tired of hearing like, oh, well, the contractor just did something they weren't supposed to do. Like, why don't we have any
Hmm.
control over contractors in this city? Like,
Yeah. I have a lot of questions. There's a lot of places to go with that.
it
Um, yeah. So yeah,
it
sometimes it's overwhelming.
it is overwhelming. I mean, like, I don't know. The one of the topics for today is seeing red. And like, I'm on a red theme this week in case you didn't notice. Um, uh, like this stuff makes people mad, and it makes people angry, and I think legitimately so. I don't think that. I mean, did not everybody grow up reading Horton Hears a Who, or like what's the other Dr. Seuss book
Um, yeah, I don't know. They made the movie out of it, right?
uh
The like creature. Yeah, I don't know.
looking it up
But I
now
know you're
just
talking
because
about
the Lorax, sorry.
the Lorax, right? The movie. Yes.
And yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah.
the Lorax is right. I don't know. Did we not all
Yeah.
grow up listening to the Lorax?
Right. So I've been working a lot on the PGW either transition, whatever that might mean. So PGW is our municipally owned gas utility. So it's owned by the city, which is pretty awesome. Because if it's corporate, we have less control, right? If it's owned by the city, then we make decisions as a community about what happens with it. And it's the largest municipally owned utility in America. So what they're trying to do, the Office for Sustainability had a private contractor do a diversification study because with the city's goals, PGW can't keep operating as it is. I don't think everyone thinks this, but ultimately, so the city has passed resolutions that say it will get all of its energy by 2050. It's like a couple of different resolutions, and there's a slightly gray area to me, but all of its energy from renewables, including heat, and renewables don't include gas, because sometimes companies wrongly say that natural gas is a renewable. It's not. And so if that's the case, we have to stop using gas. And so I have some questions about like city operations, whether that includes PGW or not, or like the fine print about that, which actually becomes very essential. But ultimately, if our goal as a city is to be a sustainable city, then we can't use gas, period. So the diversification study suggested decarbonized gas options, which are not good. Sometimes what people talk about when they're talking about decarbonized gas is that they're talking about hydrogen blending. So blending hydrogen into the gas system, which there is green hydrogen, which is hydrogen produced through renewable energy, but there's only a very small amount, and we really need that for sectors that are impossible to do other energy with, like fertilizers. So there's not much available, and we need it for certain things. So we can't, and it's very inefficient to use it for heating homes. So what we need to use renewables, and we need to electrify essentially. So, and electrification is another part of the diversification study. Better weatherization, which is something that we need to be doing. We need to be making sure that our homes and buildings are not leaking energy. So, like for example, you can hear my windows rattling when there's wind. It's terrible. Like the envelope of my house is leaking a bunch, which is in a way good because my natural gas stove does not have a hood. So there's natural gas leaking into my house, which is bad for my air quality, which is bad for my body. But if I'm trying to heat my home, the heat is seeping out through the window. So it's also very inefficient. So all that is to say, we have a reckoning that's coming with our natural gas. So there's been all of these hearings about PGW electrifying, and they've been talking about a geothermal grid, which actually there was an article recently about it that I haven't gotten to read because I've been working on this show. I think PGW, I just read the headline, I think they're saying like geothermal won't work, but they just approved $500,000 for a networked geothermal, which is basically sending water through the pipes to heat homes rather than natural gas using heat pumps. And heat pumps extract heat from the ground through electrical rather than through gas energy use to heat homes. And also so natural gas is used in heating homes, in your dryer, in your stove, or if you have a natural gas stove rather than an electric stove. So there's a couple of different places that use it, but predominantly in heating your home in the winter. And heat pumps are a good electric alternative to gas. They're much more efficient than gas. Kind of like an induction stove is much more efficient than a gas stove. And induction is like the new wave of electrification. Sorry, I'm really getting into the weeds on this, but not many people know that we have to have this natural gas transition, and PGW is really not interested in making this transition. So they're really pushing back on it. And some people are saying, okay, so do we need to get rid of our gas company? So like DC recently passed a gas ban, and I believe they're also getting rid of their gas company. Whereas because ours is municipally owned, we want to preserve that. We have a lot of control over this utility, but we also know that we can't use gas in a future that's sustainable. So
I mean, I would push back on this just a little bit. I think that just from a scientific-ish, I mean, I'm not a scientist, per se, but as far as, energy sources, um, that are petrochemical in nature. And when I say petrochemical, I actually just had somebody ask me what petrochemical means the other day, and they actually literally didn't know. Petrochemicals are any chemicals developed out of fossilized carbon. So it's stuff dug up from the ground. Um, from a general overall, so I love getting off on tangents. That's what this show's kind of all about anyway, so don't worry about that. From an overall general perspective, our existence on planet Earth, human existence on planet Earth, is the first time in the history that we know of that a species has pulled energy stored in the crust of the planet out of the planet, and then put it into the atmosphere. So anytime you're doing that, the Earth isn't in a perfectly closed system, but it's close enough that you can model it as a closed system. So if you're taking all of this stored energy and you're just suddenly releasing it out into the atmosphere, it doesn't have anywhere to go, and energy doesn't disappear or dissipate. You can just change forms of it. And so there's all these questions about, well, we've gotten to where we are as a society by using all this stored energy, that's stored in the earth from billions and millions of years ago. And so what now? Like, what happens with all that? And carbon dioxide emissions, carbon monoxide emissions, all kind, ether emissions, etc. They all are results of using petrochemicals. At the same time, uh, there are some petrochemicals that cause more damage than others. Um, where, like when you burn something and it has carbon dioxide emissions, that carbon dioxide adds to the greenhouse effect. This is an actual measurable effect. The carbon dioxide really does reflect infrared light back towards the earth, and it lets it in from outside the earth. So the sun shines on earth 24 hours a day, 365 and a quarter days a year. A good portion of that energy is infrared light that comes in, and then the carbon dioxide that we're putting out into the atmosphere reflects that heat back down onto the crust of the earth, where we live. And as I said just a moment ago, energy doesn't dissipate. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't go anywhere. It just changed form. So some of it is stored by plants. Some of it is then processed by animals. That's where we get all our calories that we run on. That's where we get pretty much all the energy that has ever existed on Earth is from the sun. So without the ability for that energy to go back into space, we're now storing more energy because of carbon dioxide emissions. All that being said, even the burning of the petrochemicals, the releasing of energy that has been stored in the crust for eons, adds to the energy that is in the atmosphere. But natural gas does not burn to carbon dioxide. It does burn to mostly just water and oxygen. It's one of the cleaner burning petrochemicals that we have, which is why you can run it in a house without a hood. But it's not uh, all burning of petrochemicals is eventually going to have to go away because we only have so much stored energy in the crust of the earth. Besides only having so much of it, there's the question of what happens to it after we burn it, after we use it up. And adding that energy into the atmosphere is what's creating global warming. It's what's creating global climate change. It's what creates the pocket that of climate that Philadelphia lives in, because Philadelphia itself, if you talk to a climatologist or a weather expert, they'll tell you that, like, as the weather system is approaching Philadelphia, it'll do weird things, because the unpredictable things, because Philadelphia releases so much energy into the atmosphere, just from home heating and electrical use in the summer, home cooling, that we release so much energy into the atmosphere that it changes the weather systems as they come towards us. So all of that is all involved in what you're saying. The only pushback I would have to what you're saying is, again, natural gas. We shouldn't really call it natural gas, but you know, the kind of gas that you use in home heating, in cooking, etc., that PGW is responsible for, is one of the least pollutant ways that you can use petrochemicals, and it's a really minor part of what we use in the year. The industrial uses of petrochemicals are far more polluting, and I think a bigger concern than individual use of natural gas. But go ahead.
So I have a couple of things to respond. I mean, one of them is that, sure, home heating is less than larger buildings, but buildings are responsible for a major part of Philadelphia's footprint, or carbon footprint. And also, natural gas is made up of methane, which is released throughout the transport system. So it's released at fracking sites where natural gas is extracted. And actually, the organization I work for has done a lot of studies around the health of communities around fracking sites. And there's much higher cancer rates. There's higher negative health outcomes overall. So it has a huge impact on those communities. But also, when it's extracted at the fracking sites, when it's transported throughout the system, and when it arrives in Philadelphia, it leaks methane, which is, I think, there's two different numbers. It's 25 times as potent.
It's 25 times as potent as carbon dioxide.
Right, in storing energy or storing heat.
Reflected.
So it's actually, yeah. So it's in the immediate, it actually is warming our planet a lot more. And also, when it's burned, it does release carbon dioxide. And when in the home, the organization PSRPA has also done a lot of studies with Sierra Club and I think it's called Moms Against Methane, but I'm not sure, about indoor air quality. And natural gas stoves actually do affect indoor air quality, especially kids, and really have an impact, especially on people with asthma. And there's also some questions right now, it hasn't really been investigated as much as it needs to, but potential impacts on dementia, or leading to an increased risk of dementia.
I mean, so indoor air quality is a problem that human beings have always had and still have, and the worst indoor air quality is in places where the burning of renewables, burning renewables, actually using things like wood, dung, etc., creates the worst indoor air quality.
Right. Certainly, if you're comparing natural gas to coal, natural gas is going to be way more
Right.
efficient. It's going to be way more, way better, certainly.
Right.
But if we're looking at natural gas on its own, it is certainly causing climate change and it's certainly
Sure.
causing.
What I'm saying is like I don't know. I have the kind of this priority in my head, and like natural gas is one of the last ones I would care about. Like, I care about it. It's just I care about it less than, say, moving industrial use onto renewables. Like that's fully a third of the climate contributions that of human climate contributions is industrial use of petrochemical. Um, and especially the burning of petrochemical for power is like a minimum of a third is based on industrial use, and those um, those uses are easier and faster to swing than a bunch of individual houses, and the infrastructure changes that would be required um, to go along with that. Because just as an example, we were talking about solar earlier. I have solar panels on top of my house, but that was a big expenditure, and the only reason we did it is because we care about the environment. There's no net payoff here in Pennsylvania for having solar. Because of the way that the any energy credit market has been hobbled by those that are interested in continuing use of coal for energy generation. So, long story long, it's easier and faster to control that one third of our output through industrial changes and changes to business than it is to try and change individual use and individual habit. Though I agree, eventually the individual use and individual habit will have to change.
Well, I mean, that's why there's so much like work around PGW as an institution, because certainly, I mean, yeah, the individuals make up the political will to change it, and if people are able to put solar panels on their house, that's great. But the bigger problem is like, okay, what are we as a city going to use when natural gas is actually heating our city? It's causing global warming, obviously worldwide, but locally. We see these flooding impacts. And I mean, this is what I say to politicians, because I'm like, they're like, well, I don't care about global warming globally. I'm like, well, global warming
Well,
is impacting the city.
I'm always intrigued by people who try and shift the conversation by saying, "Oh, well, it's a local problem," and it's not. It's something that we need to
No,
develop a universal response to. But so I'm going to do a bad segue, and I apologize for getting off of the environmental topic because it is important. Um,
yeah,
but segue wise, we've been talking recently about the violent crime in Philadelphia, and one of the topics for the day is red states. Um, People are constantly pushing back. We have mayor's elections coming up. We just had three city council people. Speaking of local control over, you know, stuff, we had three city council people submit their resignations and say that they're not going to be city council people any longer because they're running for the mayor's office. That is Alan Dom. He is a entrepreneur. He's a landlord. He's a property owner all around Philadelphia, and he's been a city council member for, I believe it's 12 years now, if I remember correctly. Maria Quinones Sanchez also submitted her resignation, and Derek Green also submitted his resignation. Maria Quinones Sanchez is known best for being kind of middle of the road political wise. She supports the changes of um, she supports funding police. She does not support necessarily defunding the police or moving funds into things that are more important than police. And Councilmember Derek Green is most well known for pushing for a city bank, a city-owned bank, which, to your earlier point, would be super helpful for several reasons. Because we as the people control city-owned things, and having a city-owned bank would open the city to um, doing things like providing small businesses with low interest or zero interest loans, etc. It's a fast track to really controlling the economy of the city of Philadelphia and rewriting the tax code. I would like to welcome on screen Constance. Constance, if you would introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do, and if you could unmute yourself, you're on mute right now.
Well, good morning, and thank you for having me on. I'm Connie Drummond, and I am a playwright and owner of Artscape Black Box Theater in Wilmington, Delaware.
Well, welcome to the show, Connie. And you have a show coming up, Brown Skin Girl, correct?
Yeah,
And tell us a
yeah.
little bit about Brown Skin Girl and where it is, and where people can see it.
Okay, well, Brown Skin Girl is a play written about things that young brown skin girls go through, whether they're African American or Native American, or whatever whatever their race may be. It covers self-esteem issues, stereotypes, bullying on social media, and body image, that kind of thing. Back in the day, we called it latchkey kids, when your kids had to come home and stay in the house by themselves. So now we have the big sisters raising the little sisters because the mom has to work so much. So these are things that are prevalent with our young girls. And I have to say, when I interviewed and auditioned the young ladies for the play, a lot of them looked at me and say, "This is my life." So it's very relatable to, anybody that has a daughter or a young person, young female person.
Where can it be
The
seen?
play, yeah. Oh, it's going to be seen at Artscape at my Black Box Theater at 205 North Market Street in Wilmington, Delaware. The tickets are sold on Eventbrite if you want to get an advance ticket. We only have 90 seats in the theater, so we're about halfway sold out of both shows. So it's the 24th of September and the 25th.
Well, congratulations
you can go
on
online.
being nearly sold out. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Yes, this is our first show back since COVID. So we're really excited about it.
Awesome. And I wanted to, it is 11 a.m. And usually we end the stream right about now, but we were running a little late. So if you both don't mind, Linnea and Constance, I'd just like to talk a little bit also to your piece about some things that are going around the internet about various fantasy properties, and talk a little bit about the folks that are pushing it back against casting in things like the Tolkien stories. So I don't know how close you follow popular media, but Amazon recently released a new set of stories. It's not based on the Silmarillion. If you know J.R.R. Tolkien very well, he wrote kind of a background for his fantasy world, which is called the Silmarillion. But this is a new story based on Tolkien's world that represents a time before the Lord of the Rings, represents a time before the Tale of the Two Kings, and it's meant to kind of flesh out the world, and it's good fun. But a bunch of and I'll just go ahead and say it. A bunch of racists don't like that black people have representation in media now, um, and can't abide that there are black dwarves. I don't quite understand this. I think representation is important. What do you think, Connie?
Oh, I mean, it's most definitely important. I mean, Black people are a part of the world. We probably take up about half of it right now. So the fact that we are now, after all these years, getting in front of the cameras and in the media and, anchoring news stations and stuff like that, I think it's great, and I think it's long overdue. I mean, at this stage, there's a whole lot of different professions going on. I don't think that anybody should still be saying, I'm the first African American doing this or the first African American doing that. I mean, we've been here since the beginning of time,
Right.
and we're not going anywhere.
Right.
But the Black Dwarfs, I thought they were so cool when I turned the television on the other night and I was watching with the I guess it's a newer Lord of the Rings, because I watched all the other
Yes.
ones and I happen to have some time. I allow myself about 2 days a month to binge watch. So I saw that they had the new Lords of the Rings thing there, and I saw the Black Dwarf, and I was like, all right, buddy, I see what you're doing.
Well, what's funny is so this topic came up just because there's a Twitter user, Discordian Kitty on Twitter, Laura Shortridge Scott. She's actually a Scottish person. She created a thread about all of the pushback and lack of pushback in popular media on diverse casting. So like people have been complaining about black dwarves, black elves, etc. In the new Tolkien Rings of Power show,
Right.
and this isn't the first time people have started complaining about representation media. When Hunger Games came out, it's based on a popular book series. But people complained that Rue was black. Rue is described as a black character in the book.
In the book, right.
And then they also complained about the new series Sandman. Sandman is written by a living and breathing and active author, Neil Gaiman. He literally would not allow the property to be developed into a live action film or TV series until he was granted full control over it. So he's made the casting decisions. And you have people out there arguing that his black characters shouldn't be black because that doesn't follow the intent of the author. Or he has a trans character, and you have people out there arguing his trans character shouldn't be trans because that doesn't honor the intent of the author. He's the author, and he's out there telling people. So what I said on the internet, and I'll repeat here at the risk of being overbearing, black people do not exist in the racist imagination. That's the problem. That's the real problem. When you're reading something, when you're thinking about a creative work, you create this world in your head. No matter who you are, how uncreative you are, you create a world in your head, and you picture the characters, and you picture them interacting. And the real problem is that black people do not exist as humans in the racist mind. And so if you have a problem with some black casting, I would say you probably need to self-examine and wonder why you've never imagined a character as something other than a white male. But yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that when we're doing things creatively and doing things wonderful, they pretend not to be able to see us. But every bad thing that we do is always front and center. So, as a Black female, I've actually felt that sometimes when I try to, cast for different roles, which is one of the reasons why I started my production company, Lady C Productions, is to be able to give roles to people that look like me. Over the years, I've expanded. I've always had a diverse audience, and most of the times, I have a diverse cast. You can't make people come to be a part of your production if they don't want to for some reason. But I've always opened Lady C Productions and our plays up to everybody. So I'm one of those writers that I'm pretty much colorblind. But when it came to this particular play, although I didn't write it, a friend of mine wrote it, and I decided to produce it here instead of Detroit, where she lives at. I just thought that it was needed for the things that are going on today, because I run into so many young people in my business, and the things that I hear them talk about is just horrible. Like when I was a kid, we didn't have social media. We had one bully in school. Now, if you're on social media, you can be bullied by 10,000 people at a time. And young people they're committing suicide and all kind of stuff. Just little things, body image, hair color, your hair texture, those kind of things. And in a perfect world, everybody would just love everybody for who they are.
Yep. Well, in good news, this week, about online bullying, one of the biggest organizations, and these are organizations, don't get it mixed. Just because they're online doesn't mean they're any less organizations than the KKK is and was. There was an organization called Kiwi Farms, and that's been successfully taken down. They were an anti-trans organization, and they would post the personal details of people who were trans or their parents, and people would harass and actually, do violent things to the people who were listed on Kiwi Farms. Up to the point where it would cost people their lives. People would commit suicide or be killed in pranks. People would be swatted, which is having the police called to your house on false charges, etc. And people would be killed, and so that has actually been successfully taken down, even off of some of the last places that were willing to defend Kiwi Farms as freedom of speech. They've successfully gotten the group organized to try and protect people, has successfully gotten them removed from things that supposedly protect freedom of speech. That is a good news in that department. I think there's a bit of reckoning coming for those who spent the last 5 or 6 years thinking that they could get away with saying or doing anything because the president of the United States could say or do anything. Hopefully that's hopefully we're returning to a time where people realize that there are consequences for saying things. I don't know. I might be wrong. If you have, I think I've covered all of today's topics. Just scrolling through here, things. One funny, just a funny little side note. If you don't follow current events as regularly as I do, you might not have heard, but there was a guy on a flight from Philadelphia recently. It was like last week. This is actually very recent. Who started abusing his row mate, who was sitting next to him, for being a queer person, and he was asked by the flight attendants to leave the flight, and he started spouting off a whole bunch of anti-LGBTQ stuff, but lets you think he's only anti-LGBTQ There was some follow up to this because he got out into the terminal and folks started recording him there because he was yelling at the manager who was escorting him out of the building, and he started shouting at nearby people and started using racial epithets. So, you know, like these things are very tied together.
Shocking.
What's that? Go ahead.
Just said shocking. Yeah, what you were saying, like, wow, you would be both homophobic and racist? No.
Yeah, no, never. They're not tied together at all. But no, they are very tied together, and yeah. So this guy was fired from his job, which during one of his rants that was recorded, he said he was leaving anyway. But it might be a little bit hard for him to get a new job in his chosen field of engineering. Hopefully. Engineering is full of white guys who think that they know better than everybody else. My wife's an engineer, and I feel bad for her having to work in that environment every day.
Wow.
At any rate, any last thoughts from either of you guys? We'll go. Let Linnea go first. You have any last thoughts? Anything to add? You want to plug Heart Wrote Out Twice, and so can you one more time?
I would, yeah. I mean, so you can get your tickets on the Fringe Arts website. I haven't checked the sales this morning, but I think there's 50 seats, so it's your best chance of getting a ticket is the Thursday night at 5:30. That's this Thursday or tomorrow rather. Jeez. So if you want to see tonight or Friday, I would also get your tickets really quickly because there's not that many left.
Awesome. Connie, any last thoughts? And would you like to plug your show, Brown Skin Girls, just one
Yeah,
more time?
sure. Come on out on September 24th and 25th. Both shows are at 4 p.m. at Artscape, 205 North Market Street in Wilmington, Delaware, to see our play Brown Skin Girl. Bring your daughters, bring your nieces, bring any little girl in your life. They're going to need this.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today and talking about the random things that I always talk about. Really appreciate you joining us. Always appreciate my guests for coming on. I'm going to switch up to a one-up of me so you guys can hang out and chat in the Zoom if you'd like, or you can head out, whatever is more convenient for you. But I'm going to take you off screen, so thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of my guests. Thank you for joining us online. We really appreciate it. Appreciate you coming out and joining us every Wednesday. We'll be back next Wednesday. We don't have our guest confirmed yet, but we'll be back next Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. As always. And hopefully you can join us. Come by, see what topics we have, see what we're covering, and enjoy the show. If you like what you've seen, please consider supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/LightThiefProductions. Sign up for alerts on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook. Hit that like button wherever you're watching, and we look forward to having you again next week. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good week.